the source sheet by clicking on a link to the Google Doc, which will have the sources. That's pretty clear? Okay, great. Now, we have coming up this week the holiday of Shavuot, which is Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of the giving of the Torah. And of course, the notion of receiving the Torah per se is an extremely important stage in what it means to be a Jew, but it's obviously not enough. If one receives something but doesn't use it, so then it's obviously not going to be particularly meaningful. So I want to send out a big Yasher Koach to everybody who's participating, not only in this specific shiur, but in the Efrat English Kollel, that you are an embodiment of this ethic that receiving the Torah is not just enough, but to actually have learning of Torah as part of your ongoing daily routine is extremely impressive, and it's the actualization of what we received at Sinai to employ this in our day-to-day living. So way to go. A big Yasher Koach to everybody. What I want to do today is explore on that very topic the notion of learning Torah, a fascinating and cryptic passage in the Talmud, which defines curriculum. You know, it's really interesting to look at the Efrat Kollel curriculum. You know, what's on it? Now, I assume that to a large extent, it's being dictated by whatever the teacher wants to teach. So whatever teacher you can corral to giving some time, you know, if they're in the whatever, you know, they want to teach Zohar, they'll teach Zohar. If they want to teach Rambam, teach Rambam, whatever it is. I imagine that's the way it goes. Perhaps Bruce tries to negotiate with them a little bit to varying degrees of success. The Talmud itself actually addresses the issue of what should an ideal Torah curriculum look like? What should you be learning? Okay, so let's take a look at that particular passage. So source number one, I hope you have it in front of you. Passage from the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Safra, Mishum Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya. So Rabbi Safra said the name Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya. It's important to point out that Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya, the source of this particular tradition, he was a Tana. Just bear that in mind. Tana, meaning he is coming from the time of the Mishnah. Okay, before the Talmud. My dichtiv, what is the meaning of that which is written in the Torah? V'shinantam levanecha, in the book of Devarim. You should teach them to your children. Of course, we're very familiar with this because we say it in the Shema. When you say the Shema twice a day. So you should teach them to your children. So Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya explains, when it says V'shinantam levanecha, you should teach them to your children. Al tikre v'shinantam, don't read it, don't pronounce that word v'shinantam. You should teach them to your children, v'shinantam. Ella v'shilashtam, you should triple them. From the word shalosh, 3. Now, what does that mean? Don't read it, v'shinantam, you should teach them, but rather v'shilashtam. So first we'd have to take a step back. V'shinantam means to teach in the context of the passage in the Torah, in the Shema, which we're quoting here. But etymologically, the word v'shinantam comes from the word sheni. Sheni. What does the word sheni mean?
Repeat.
Yeah, it means two, right? So why does the word for two somehow evolve to meaning teach? Because the way we teach is by repeating the idea over and over again. So it integrates the idea into one's mind, especially if we're talking about the oral law, which we've been addressing the past few weeks. The only way to remember something, unless you happen to be an incredible genius with a photographic memory, is by repeating it over and over again. So v'shinantam means to repeat them, but it's come to mean to teach them, to repeat something over and over again. That's why, by the way, the book called the Mishnah, it's the same word. Mishnah. It means a collection of teachings, a collection of those things which are repeated, right? Twice. Okay, fine. So the Talmud here says, don't pronounce it Vishinantam, even though it says Vishinantam. Pronounce it Vishilashtam. So not related to the word Sheni, but the word Shalosh, which means, of course, what? Anybody hold up some fingers? 3. That was good. Okay. So now what would that mean? Don't pronounce it Vishinantam, but pronounce it Vishilashtam. Not from 2, but from 3. Here's where we get to a Torah curriculum. Le'olam yishalesh adam shnotav. A person should always tripartite, make into 3 parts. Yishalesh, divide into 3 parts. Word shalosh. His years when it comes to Torah curriculum. How so? Shlish b'mikra. Devote 1/3 of your life to the study of Mikra. What's Mikra? Scripture, right? Tanakh, the written Torah. That which is read, Mikra, for the word Koreh. Shalish b'Mishnah. The next third of your life, devote to Mishnah, the oral traditions, which are learned by memorization, repeating them over and over again. Shlish, and the last third of your life, devote to Talmud. Okay? So that's the tradition. So then the Talmud says, wait a second. This is a very problematic suggestion for a Torah curriculum. 1/3 of your life devoted to Tanakh, 1/3 of your life devoted to the oral teachings, the Mishnah, and 1/3 of your life devoted to Talmud. The Talmud asks an obvious question. Mi yodea kama chaye. In order to carry out this curriculum, you're going to have to know how long you're going to live. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So if you live to 120, and you know that in advance, so I suppose you can, I'll focus for 40 years on Tanakh, 40 years on the teachings in the Mishnah, and 40 years on Talmud. The only problem is that, unfortunately, or fortunately, we don't know how long we're going to live. So how does one possibly divide up one's life into this tripartite curriculum? So the Talmud says, Lo tzricha liyome. No, it doesn't mean that you divide up your life in the sense of the first third Tanakh, second third Mishnah, last third Talmud. Rather, it means each day, by day, by day. So let's take a look at how Rashi interprets that. What does it mean? Liyome, in the Talmud, you're going to divide up by day. So Rashi says, Yemei HaShavua. Means that you divide up the days of the week. It doesn't mean you take your whole lifespan, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. It means that each day of the week, so the week is subdivided into 3 parts. Now, what does that mean? Tosfot explains what Rashi means. That it means that Sunday, Monday, you'll devote to the study of Tanakh. Tuesday, Wednesday, you'll devote to the study of Mishnah. Thursday, Friday, you'll devote to the study of Talmud. What do you do on Shabbat? I don't know. It's not part of the curriculum. You learn Zohar. You'll eat and drink and be merry on Shabbat. You do a review. Okay? So that's how Rashi interprets the Gemara's explanation of how to, in fact, apply this tripartite curriculum. You divide your week's learning. Now, Bruce, are you hearing this? You have to rethink the Kollel schedule. Okay? Sunday, Monday, Tanakh, right? Tuesday, Wednesday, Mishnah, right? Thursday, Friday, Talmud. Okay, that's the way Rashi understands this suggestion of a curriculum.
We do have a good mix.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Right. Now, I want to point out that Tosfot actually disagrees. So Tosfot, in the next source, quotes Rashi, and he says he doesn't agree, and he gives a different explanation. If you take a look at Tosfot, we're just going to skip to the middle of the second line. He says the following. I'm sorry, the beginning of the third line. Venerally, he says, it appears to me the way to do it is the following. Talmud doesn't mean that you divide up the week into 3 parts. Talmud says liyome, right, into days. So Rashi understood that 2 days, 2 days, 2 days. So he says, no, nearly lefaresh b'chol yom vayom atzmo yishalesh. When the Talmud says, no, by day, it means divide up each day. So here's a different suggestion for the Efrat Kolel, that you're divide up the hours that you're learning into 3 parts each day, right? So the first third of the hours you have allotted to learning will be Tanakh. The second part of your learning will be for the Mishnah, and the third part will be for Talmud. So says Tosfot that's what the Gemara means.
Rabbi?
Yes.
We just had in a prior year a discussion about subjectivity versus objectivity, and here it seems as if they're trying to objectify learning rather than make it at all subjective. What if people have a yen for midrash or halakha, or, why try to categorize it so formally?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I think that question will actually be answered a little bit as we go on to the shiur. Okay, at least one way of answering that question. Yes, Arthur.
Yeah. Also, Rabbi Yishmael in Brachot talks about studying most of the day and spending a small part of the day earning a living. So you have a totally different design here, in essence.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. In other words, if I understood the question properly, you're sort of assuming, I think, that a person's going to be learning all day. So then you divide up your...
Well, not me, Rabbi Yishmael in Brachot 35b. Yeah,
so I understand what you're saying. So you're suggesting that this source seems to reflect you're going to devote 12 hours to learning each day. So 4, 4, and 4. Okay, I mean, the truth of the matter is the Gemara itself here doesn't explicitly say that, nor does Tosfot, when he explained it, explicitly say that. It may mean the time allotted to learning should be divided up into 3. So if you have 3 hours to learn each day, not 12, right, because you've got to go to work, let's say you're in the computer business, right? You got to work, man a store, whatever it is, so you can divide up those 3 hours into Mikra, Mishnah, and Talmud. So it's not 100% clear that there's a dispute there. Okay. Now, the Tosfot goes on and points out something really interesting. So I hope that everybody has made, when they woke up already this morning, the Birkat Torah, right? We wake up in the morning as part of Psukei Zera, we say a bracha over learning Torah. So we say, right, we once talked about this, Lasok b'divrei Torah, Asher b'charbanu, etc. You notice that right after we say Birkat Torah, since we're saying a bracha over learning Torah, it's actually a good idea to learn some Torah, right? You make a shakol over some whiskey, you should drink the whiskey. Okay, it's making me thirsty. So if you look in the Sidur, it gives you something to learn after, very brief, in case you got to go to work. Some people actually work. I know it's hard to imagine such a thing. So if you remember what you said this morning, so the first thing we said after making the Birkat Torah is Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha, Ya'ar Hashem panav elecha v'yichoneka, etc. That's a pasuk in the Torah, right? It's Birkat Kohanim, the blessings given by the Kohanim. It's a pasuk in the Torah, in the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. So that is from Mikra. It's a passage from Mikra, from the Tanakh. Then we say, Elu dvarim she'en lehem shiur. These are things that don't have a measure. Hapeh bikurim b're'ayon, kumniv chasadim, Talmud Torah. Right? These things are not defined in specific quantities. So that happens to be, I don't know if you ever noticed it, it's a passage from the Mishnah. And then we say, these are things that a person benefits from in this world, and you benefit continually into the world to come, honoring your parents and acts of kindness, etc. That happens to be a passage from the Talmud, Masechet Shabbat. So Tosfot points out that where'd that come from? So the editors of the Sidur who put that in there, it was because of this tripartite curriculum. And by the way, that supports the notion, Arthur, in terms of answering your question, it's not so much that you take 12 hours of the day when you're awake and divide up into 3 parts. It's that whatever time you have for learning, divide up into 3. So the Birkot Torah that you're saying in the Siddur, like, hey, I really have to work for a living. I got 9 children to support. And so I got exactly 5 minutes. Okay, so here we go.
Did you pick that because you happen to have 9 children?
It's true, and a dog. So the first deal. So that's why the editors of the Siddur laid it out this way. Now we have a pasuk from the Torah, the Mishnah, and the Talmud. That's tripartite curriculum. Okay, fine. Now, I have a lot of problems with this, and maybe in general. A bullshit. Very few problems, only blessings. So, number one, I totally don't understand the derivation of this halacha of the tripartite ideal curriculum from the Torah when it says Vishinantam levanecha. You should teach them to your children. I'm going to send out a question here to fellow scholars here. Can anybody cite another famous example of this midrashic technique that's used here in the Talmud that we just learned? Al tikre, don't pronounce it, don't read it, X, Ella, but rather pronounce it Y. What's the famous example that we're familiar with that uses that midrashic technique? Don't read it this way, but read it that way.
Children.
Good. Exactly. Al tikre banaich, right? Don't read the word your children. Ella bonaich, your builders. Hey, that's a very famous midrash. Why is it famous? Because it's printed in the Siddur that we say every Shabbat, for example. Okay? So we're familiar with that. I just want to point out the difference between that example, which is the classical use of don't pronounce it this way, but pronounce it that way. You see, now that may sound strange. Don't pronounce it your sons, banaich, ella bonaich. You know, the Torah does not have vocalization. Everybody knows that? A Torah scroll? You ever had an aliyah? There's no dots in the Torah. So now that's a challenge. If you think about it for a second, can you imagine writing an English sentence that would only have consonants but no vowels? That'd be pretty strange. And it might be a little bit of a challenge to read. But we're so used to it, but we don't appreciate, that's what Hebrew does. It's a string of consonants with no vowels.
The odd part that in the Torah, there are specific places where we dafka don't read it the way we think it should be read.
Okay, that's actually true. And those are a little bit of a different kind of a category, which I don't want to deal with right now. It's really interesting how we totally don't pronounce the word the way it's written. Okay, and why is that? So that's a whole nother shiur. But in terms of this specific technique of don't pronounce it, banaich ela bonaich, your children, your sons, but rather your builders. So there's a certain logic to that midrashic technique. Why? Because one could say that why did Hashem create the Torah in a way where there's no vowels, at least no vowels indicated? It could be precisely for this reason. In order that the word as written in the Torah can convey multiple meanings, right? We assume that the Torah is multi-layered. Shivim panim l'Torah. There's 70 layers of meaning in the Torah, or the idea of pardes, right? Each passage in the Torah has these 4 ways of approaching it. All true. So that could help us understand why this Torah is not written with the vowels, to open up the possibility of seeing multiple meanings and allusions, with an A, not illusion, allusions within that word. So when we say don't pronounce it banaich ela bonaich, there's a certain reasonableness to that it's written without vowels in order to convey multiple meanings. Fine. But look at this example. This is totally different. Don't read it vishinantam, but shilashtam. What is the radical, perplexing difference in this use of that midrashic technique? Can anybody tell me what's totally different here?
They've made up a whole new word.
Complete letter changes.
It's a complete letter changes. We're not talking about taking a series of consonants and then changing the vocalization, which has a certain, like I said, reasonableness to it. This is a complete radical change of the consonants themselves. You're kidding. What? Don't read a Vishi Nantam, read a Vishi Lashtam? Sense does that make?
Well, as you said earlier, it went from a Tana to an Amora. So in the days of the Tana, they only had the Mishnah.
I'm not sure what you mean by
In the
that.
days of Amoraim, they're now utilizing Gemara. So if you want to learn, it makes sense to add in the new level of learning.
Oh, okay. You're explaining this philosophically. I'm asking a different question. I want to know the midrashic methodology. I don't understand. The derivation makes no sense to me, right? You can't say, oh, it says Vishinantam, but pronounce it Vishilashtam. What?
It doesn't.
And then learn a halacha from that.
Doesn't that sort of
So
go against
I understand
the
philosophically
Mishnah?
what you said, but that's not my question. Yes.
Doesn't that go against the Mishnah in Megillah, which says that in Birkat Kohanim, for example, someone who pronounces the ayin or the aleph differently can't lead?
So, okay. So, by the way.
It's a defective tefillah.
Yeah. Okay. So this doesn't mean, by the way, for all you Balei Kriya out there, this doesn't mean when you read the Torah in Shul that you should say Vishi Lashtam instead of Vishi Nantam. Right? So, yeah, you're right. But it's not just saying in terms of deriving a halacha from it about the tripartite curriculum, read it as if it says Vishi Lashtam. Okay. So that's problem number one. Like, I don't understand the derivational methodology. Problem number two, these are all really interesting issues, at least to me. So, and that is the following. I mentioned on purpose that the source of this halacha, the one who quotes is Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania. He was a Tana. Okay? So he lives in the time of the Mishnah. And what does he say? According to our conclusion, devote either your week, like Rashi said, or each day, like Tosfot, to divide into this tripartite curriculum. And Mikra, right, Tanakh, Mishnah, and Talmud. Uh-oh. A Tana is telling me that I should devote a third of my time to studying Talmud. Is anybody troubled by this? There's a severe logical problem.
There's no
Would
Talmud.
anybody like to articulate? Yeah, Bruce.
There is no Talmud.
There is no Talmud.
At least in written form, or I'm not sure. I don't mean written, but they must have had some explanation with the Mishnah.
So we'll deal with this, but right now I just want you to appreciate. Wow. So we don't understand what the word Talmud means, and we don't understand the derivational methodology of don't read a Vishinantam, but rather Shilashtam. So now I want to see if we can, as we go, answer those two.
I want to do a list with you.
Questions. Okay, someone has their microphone on and is speaking.
Huh?
Kenny, please mute.
Okay.
If
So
you need me to, of course I will. Question is when.
whoever is the moderator can mute him.
Gotta find him.
Okay. Okay, fine. So now, what I'd like to do is look at a really fascinating comment from the Torah Tamimah. So for those who don't know, Rabbi Baruch Halevi Epstein, great rabbi from Russia who lived at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century. And he wrote a book that is one of my all-time favorite sforim. What he does is he goes through the entire Chumash and he anthologizes passages from the Talmud and Midrash that comment on those verses in the Chumash. It's selective, it's not encyclopedic. And then he comments on the methodology of how that particular halacha or comment was derived from the verse in the Torah, and comments sometimes on the concept. And he's extremely creative and pretty easy to read. So I recommend this for your bookshelf, the Torah Tamimah. And he says the following. So he quotes Rashi, Perush de Midayek midelo k'tiva shanitem. So he says that, first of all, anytime you have a midrash, the midrash is going to be provoked by something peculiar in the verse. Either a grammatical peculiarity, which inspires the midrash, or a conceptual peculiarity. In this particular case, he quotes Rashi, which we didn't discuss up till now, who says that the reason that there's something peculiar which causes the midrash to respond by saying, don't read a vishinantam, but vishilashtam, right? Don't double it, but triple it, and then the suggested curriculum, is because, in fact, we pointed out before that the word vishinantam comes from the word sheni. Well, at first glance, the word sheni has how many nuns in it?
One.
One. Vishinantam, well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. How many nuns are in vishinantam?
Two.
Where'd that nun come from? So Rashi says, really, according to the rules of Hebrew grammar, it should have said vishanitem, right? For the word sheni, you should teach them by rote, right? Repeat. What's this vishinantam? So there's something peculiar that then generates the midrash. So the Torah Tamima now goes on, after he quotes Rashi, he goes on to explain that, okay, there's something peculiar in the midrash, but how do you get from, I understand the problem, there's an extra nun, but how do you get from vishinantam to say, oh, it really means vishilashtam? You should triple it. He says something brilliant. Ready for this? Rashi's not explaining how do you get from the word vishinantam to the word vishilashtam. That's the question we asked about. It's totally changing the consonants. So he says the following. While korcheno haperush, he says we're forced to give the following explanation. Just put on your seatbelts. It's a little of a read here, but it's amazing. Ingenious. He says the following. Shinun v'chidud. The word, I don't know how many know in Hebrew the word chad. Does anybody know the word chad in Hebrew? Sharp. Chad means sharp. Okay. He says the word vishinantam, shin nun nun, seems to be related to the word shanun v'chadud. Chadud means sharp, and shanun also means sharp. He's using that word chadud just to explain what shanun means. It means sharp, something sharp, clear. Like when you say, and even in English, oh, that writing is very sharp. It's clear. Vishinantam doesn't mean to teach them. It means to make the words of the Torah very sharp. Shin nun nun means sharp, like chadud. Shehu divrei haTorah hanitanim, that the words of the Torah which are given libanecha, over to your children, mechudadim ushnunim befihem, that those words have to be sharp and focused, clear. That's shanun, means clear, sharp, in their mouths. Again, so you should mute your microphone. V'kol zehu rak al yedei limud hamikra im hamishna v'hagemara. How does one actualize this mitzvah of vishinantam? Not to repeat it, to make it sharp, shanun. The only way to make the message of the Torah sharp and clear is by learning the psukim, mikra, together with Mishnah and Gemara, for obvious reasons, right? When there's no way to understand what the written Torah means, this is what we talked about in the past few weeks, unless you couple it with the oral traditions, the Mishnah, and the Gemara, which clarifies the intent of the Mishnah. So that's what it means. Vishinantam, make the Torah sharp and clear, which implies you must teach the psukim in the Torah together with the Mishnah and the Gemara and the Talmud in order to clarify the precise meaning of the Torah. Then the meaning of the pasuk will be extremely clear. V'zeshu amar. Now he's going to put that meaning back into the Gemara. This is what it really means when it says, Al tikre v'shinantam. Don't read it v'shinantam. Klomar, iyata yachol lavo lidei hora'at hamilah hazot b'mlo muvana ela al pi halimud mishulash. It means, doesn't mean don't literally read it v'shinantam, but read it v'shilashtam. It means that don't think that you can understand and convey the meaning of the Torah by simply teaching what it says. No. Vishinantam, just by teaching it literally. No, vishilashtam. Shinantam really means, that's what the Talmud is saying. Vishinantam really means teach the written Torah with the oral Torah. Teach the Mikra with Mishnah and Talmud. So the Talmud is really saying when it says, don't read it vishinantam. Don't convey it by simply teaching is what you thought the word vishinantam meant. But look at the deeper meaning of vishinantam. It means to make it sharp. And how is the Torah made sharp? Through the vehicle of the oral law, Mishnah and Talmud. V'lachein, and therefore, she'atam moser divrei Torah levanecha. When you give over the words of Torah to your children, you mechudadim, they have to be sharpened mikodim in advance. You can't give over what you yourself don't know. You in advance, ayidei limud kazeh b'ficha ata. You have to have it sharp in your own mouth first. V'shinantam. It should be sharp in your mouth by combining the written Torah with the oral Torah in order then to convey it to your children. V'shilashtam, through the Tri-Partite curriculum. Amazing, amazing rereading of the Talmud. Yes, Bruce.
So why wouldn't, let's say, the term pardes, which at every level explains the Pesukim, bring more clarity to the Torah, and even in the Mishnah, for example, something like the Bartanura, sort of, because the Gemara tends to really go all over the place. I mean, if you want to focus on written and oral, the way we understand it anyway, or Zohar, for example, a deeper meaning. I mean, it's a.
Are you saying, make sure I understand your question, are you saying that this tripartite curriculum, Mikra, Mishnah, and Talmud, is insufficient? Because even if I learn Mishnah and Talmud, I still am not really going to be able to understand fully the meaning of the Torah unless I also learn the Zohar and all these other great texts, which will give me a more full and deeper meaning. Is that what you're saying? Why limit it to excellent question? That will be explicitly answered. It's going to be our punchline, as a matter of fact. We'll get there. Okay. Now, the Torah Tamima says something absolutely amazing. Remember that the Talmud said that, what does it mean? Yishalesh shnotav. That a person should divide into 3 shnotav, his years. Shnotav means shana, from the word shana, years, right? So now the Torah Tamima takes what he just explained and does a brilliant rereading of the word shnotav. We thought it meant divide up the years of your life, right? That's what the Talmud eventually said. And then it ended up saying, no, it means the days, right? Either the days of the week or each day into 3 parts. So he says the following, that which the Talmud says shnotav, his years, ein kavana shnei chayei adam. It doesn't mean the years of a life of man. Ki b'muvan limud ushnot. You know what the word shnotav actually means? Remember, we just said the word shana also means to learn, to teach, the word sheni. So the Talmud really, according to the conclusion of the Talmud, it means yishalesh adam shnotav. It doesn't mean he should divide it to 3 parts his life. According to the conclusion of the Talmud, it means divide up shnotav, his learning. Shnotav doesn't mean his years. It means his learning, from the word mishnah, learning. A beautiful rereading of the Talmud. So divide up shnotav. A person should always divide up their learning, whether it's 3 hours a day or 12 hours a day or 6 minutes. That yishalesh adam shnotav, he should divide up his learning, right? That's how the Torah Timimu explains than that conclusion of the Talmud. Really beautiful and profound. Okay, so far so good. So now what have we answered now? We've answered the problem of the derivation. The derivation. It's based upon this idea of vishinan tam really means to make sharp, right? How do you make sharp? Vishilash tam, by the Tri-Partite curriculum. Fine. But not everybody agrees with this. And now we're going to see something really fundamental. I alluded to this, I think, last time in our shiur. We're going to look at a Shulchan Aruch that is not the famous Shulchan Aruch of the 16th century, but Shulchan Aruch Harav. You may have heard of that. The founder of Chabad Hasidut, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, who didn't live in Lubavitch. It's not really fair to call him the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. Right? So Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Ladi, came from Ladi. So he wrote a Shulchan Aruch. Now he also wrote the Tanya and other mystical works, Hasidic works. He was an unbelievable Talmid Chacham in the classical sense of Halacha, Talmud. His master was the Maggid of Mezrich, who was one of the chief disciples of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Maggid of Mezrich gathered around him the most outstanding spiritual giants of the day as young men, who were interested in the path of the Baal Shem Tov, Hasidus. And he wanted to rewrite a Shulchan Aruch that would be appropriate for that time, for those who were seeking a spiritual halachic path. And he picked out Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Ladi, who was the youngest of his students, for this job, because he was a total master of both the halachic aspects of Torah and also the spiritual. So he wrote a very important work, which is referred to even by non-Hasidim. It's classic, Shulchan Aruch Harav. It's just the following. He's explaining the issue of the derivation, what the Talmud's telling us about this tripartite curriculum. I'm going to skip the first few words. Shekach kiblu chachamim. So too, our sages have a Kabbalah tradition. Bi'or mitzvat v'hanhagat limud. The way that you're supposed to fulfill the mitzvah of learning Torah. They had a Kabbalah. Kabbalah in classical rabbinic literature doesn't mean Kabbalah. It means a tradition, that which is received. Ish v'pi ish. And it was handed down from generation to generation, the proper way to learn Torah. How so? I'm skipping the parentheses. Shetzarich le'lmod Torah shebichtav v'shebal peh b'chol yom b'tchilat limudo. That you have to learn the written Torah coupled together with the oral Torah. For the reason that the Torah Timimu explained, in terms of conceptually, that if you want to understand what the Torah means, you have to couple it with the oral Torah. But now the Shulchan Aruch of the Rav explains, what about the technical derivation? Don't read a Vishinan Tam, but Vishilash Tam. He says, Afagav al tikre Vishinan Tam. He just said, what's the source of this halacha? It was a Kabbalah, it was a tradition. Except for the Talmud itself says it's derived from a pasuk. It's not just a tradition. He says, Afagav tikre Vishinan Tam. Even though the Talmud itself derives it from a pasuk, it's not just an oral tradition. He asmachta ba'alma. It's just an asmachta. I need to, I'm sure you've heard this term before. I want to remind you of what it means, and it's very crucial. Many times, the Talmud will use a midrashic methodology, which gives us the impression that a halacha is being derived from a pasuk. Law is being derived from a verse in the Torah. And then we scratch our head. I don't understand that derivational methodology. How does the word Vishinan Tam somehow mean Vishilash Tam, like the Talmud that we just studied? The Talmud itself often asks that question about these midrashim. And it often answers, Asmachta ba'alma. It's just an asmachta. The word asmachta comes from the word lismoch, to rely upon, lean upon. It means that the source of that halacha, at least this is the simple way of explaining the word asmachta, is not really the derivation from the pasuk. The halacha came before, independent of the pasuk. It was then attached to the pasuk for other reasons, according to one explanation, for memory reasons. That by looking at the psukim and associating them with different halachot, we'll remember the halachot. But it wasn't really derived from that pasuk. So this, calling it a smachta, which the Shulchan Aruch does, totally negates the whole problem we had about, how do I derive from vishinantam, vishilashtam, the totally change of consonants? The Shulchan Aruch says, don't lose sleep over it. It's just an asmachta. It's just a way, you'll probably never forget this. Tonight, when you say the Shema in Mariv, and you get to the phrase vishinantam levanecha, I'll bet you're all going to be thinking about what we just learned, vishinantam, vishilashtam, right? Tri-Partite curriculum. Okay, so it's just an asmachta. It avoids the whole problem. Okay, now we have another problem left, and that is, how could a Tana be prescribing that the 1/3 of your time in learning should be devoted to Talmud? There's no such thing as the Talmud. So let's learn how the Rambam now codifies this halacha. Pay very careful attention, source number 6, to how he codifies this. V'chayav l'shalesh et zman limidato. A person is required to divide into 3 parts the time of their learning. By the way, he says very explicitly, it doesn't mean divide up your day into 3 parts. It means whatever time you have available for learning, divide up into 3 parts. Also interesting, he treats this Gemara as a halacha. Chayav l'shalesh et zman limidato. You're obligated. It's not good advice. It's a halacha. Shlish b'tor shebichtav, 1/3 of the time devoted to the written law. Shlish b'tor shebal peh, 1/3 devoted to the oral law. Well, wait a second. Right away, this is interesting, because I would have thought that the way the Talmud itself presented, that 2/3, the last 2/3, are both Torah shebal peh. Mishnah and Talmud are both Torah shebal peh. Rambam doesn't think so. The first third is the written law. The second third is Torah shebal peh. That's Mishnah. That's what the word Mishnah doesn't mean the Mishnah. It means Torah shebal peh. It happens to be that the book called the Mishnah is a collection of Torah shebal peh. But the word Mishnah in the Talmud doesn't mean a book called the Mishnah. It means the collections of Torah shebal peh, whether they exist still in an oral form or in a written form. It's called Mishnah. It's Torah shebal peh. So what the heck is Talmud? V'shlish, listen to this. Yavin v'yaskil achrik davar mireshito. The last third is the person should understand the end from the beginning. That means learn how to engage in extrapolation, in inference. V'yotzi davar mi davar, to be able to extract one thing from another. V'yidamed davar ledavar, to be able to learn how to compare 2 things which are truly analogous. V'yadin b'midot she'atorah nidreshet bahen, to be able to learn how to apply the 13 hermeneutical rules of Herman and his hermits. Ad she'yada he'achu ikar hamidot, until you understand how these hermeneutical rules function. V'he'ach yotzi asur v'mutar, how to paskin shailas, how to make something, pronounce it forbidden or permitted. Uki yotzei behen vidvarim shalamad mipi hashmuah, based upon the things that were learned from tradition. V'inyan zeh, this whole endeavor, it's called Talmud. Thank you, Rambam. That was amazing. The word Talmud, mentioned in the Talmud by a Tana, does not mean a book called the Talmud. Can anybody tell me in English, in a few words, apparently how does the Rambam understand the word Talmud? And how that's different than the use of his term Torah shebal peh, right? First third is written Torah. Second is the oral traditions as received. The third is Talmud. I need a volunteer. What does Talmud mean according to the Rambam in your own words?
I think it's all those things that implicate and explain better the first 2.
Okay, I think we could do better than that. Anybody else want to try?
It's, I think it's deductive reasoning based on the sources.
Yeah, I would use, I think that's more in the general, in the way that I would understand the Rambam. I would use a slightly different word that's more general, and that is analysis. So the first third of your curriculum is the written Torah. The second is you become a repository for the oral traditions. You essentially memorize them. But then you have to analyze them, think about them. What is similar to what? How do I derive this from that, etc.? Analysis. The word Talmud means analysis of the oral traditions as received. It doesn't mean the book called the Talmud. Okay, fine.
I mean, does anyone ever get to that level? I mean, the average
Yeah.
person, it's like,
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Okay, yes and no. Maybe is the answer. So anybody who studies the book of the Talmud, there's a reason that the book of the Talmud is called Talmud. Because what are you doing when you study Talmud? I hope you're not reading it. And I certainly hope you're not davening it. I used to have a Rebbe for 4 years, amazing teacher. He was a student of Rabbi Soloveitchik, Rav Yehuda Parnas. Some of you may have heard of him. So Rav Parnas, he was a little of a strong personality, and I guess he inherited from Rabbi Soloveitchik the ability to keep students on their toes by sometimes very subtle insults. Well-meaning though. So he would sometimes ask a student to explain, read and explain the Talmud. And if the student was like just reading and translating and there didn't seem to be any understanding, he would say, I'll pretend I'm the student. Zeph, don't daven the Talmud. Sort of a sad comment on what davening is, but like mindless saying of words, that's not what the Talmud is. Talmud is thoughtful analysis. Okay, so that's the way the Rambam understands Talmud. Okay, now we have a serious problem. Here's the serious problem. This is a halacha. It's from a Tana. The Tanaim were very authoritative. It's not like your local Orthodox rabbi. With all due respect to local Orthodox rabbis. It's a halacha which is codified in the codes. Has anybody noticed the curriculum, the Torah curriculum, which is what's done in actuality in yeshivot, whether we're talking about a high school yeshiva or on a older level, and whether you're talking about the more modern world or the more Haredi world. What is the curriculum? What is the curriculum? Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, certainly not according to the Rambam.
Certainly not according to the Rambam. Okay. So, it's actually kind of interesting. For someone who doesn't know what yeshivas are like, I mean, everybody here knows what yeshivas are like. But like, if you had to talk to a non-Jewish person, explain like the curriculum in, let's say, a regular classical yeshiva, traditional yeshiva. What do they study in the morning?
a little Musar maybe, and then Gemara.
Wrong. That's on your own. It's Gemara. What's the curriculum in the afternoon?
Tanakh, little Tanakh.
Oh,
And then Gemara.
you obviously.
Tanakh is
No
just
comment.
a book that quotes some catchy phrases from the Gemara.
You do that on your own. You know what the curriculum in the afternoon is? Afternoon Seder? Gemara. What's the curriculum for the night Seder?
Gemara.
So it's Gemara. Now, it's
Gemara and
true
Musar.
that in certain yeshivot, Hester, for instance, there are classes and other things, but that's not been the curriculum of, traditionally speaking, for the past at least 1,000 years, and I'm not joking. The curriculum, in actuality, of yeshivot is Gemara, Gemara, Gemara. So much for the tripartite learning, which the Gemara itself, Atana, says is based upon a pasuk in the Torah, and the Rambam codifies, and all the other codes codify this. This is I don't get it. How could it be that the world of traditional yeshivot so profoundly deviate from this halacha? Now, I didn't make up this question. This question is centuries old. So let's take a look at how Tosfot. So we're talking about 12th century, 13th century. That's a long time ago, by the way, before I was born. And Tosfot asked this question. Rabbeinu Tam Piresh, source number 7. Sha'anu somchim. How could it be that we teach Gemara, Gemara, Gemara? Not Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud. Rabbeinu Tam Piresh, Sha'anu somchim ahad amrina b'Sanhedrin. We rely upon, for our curriculum, which is Talmud, 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 on that which is said in Masechet Sanhedrin, where it says Bavel. The Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin wants to explain why is it that the Talmud is called Talmud Bavli. That's the Talmud we study all day long. Talmud Bavli, Talmud Bavli, Talmud Bavli. So the Gemara says it's called Bavel because, why is the Tower of Babel called the Tower of Babel? Babel means mixed up in Hebrew, right? Livalbel means to mix up. So the Talmud itself says the Talmud Yerushalmi, Bavli is called Talmud Bavli because it's all mixed up. Lula b'mikra b'mishnah b'gemara. What it means mixed up, not that it's confused, but any page in the Talmud includes mikra, there are psukim which are being discussed, there's a Mishnah being quoted, and there's analysis, there's Gemara. So by studying only Talmud Bavli, we really are fulfilling this tripartite curriculum of Tanakh, Mishnah, and analysis Talmud. The Gemara Bavel balul mikulam, that the Gemara of Bavel is included with all of these tripartite ingredients. That is the answer of Rabbeinu Tam in Tosfot. So far, so good. You can sleep at night.
But are we sure that this quote from the Tosfot is explicitly addressing that question?
Yeah, that's what he's addressing when he says that Tosfot's saying, how could it be that we don't follow this halacha? So he says, Sha'anu somchim, because we're relying upon this idea that the Talmud itself includes all three parts. Well, I mean, I put 3 dots there. I'm not really sure what you're asking.
Well, what I'm explicitly asking is, this is a Tosfos on the Gemara.
Right.
So
Tosfot's saying, put it this, I mean, I don't want to cut you off. Tell me if I'm not answering your question. One of the classical and most interesting aspects of Tosfot is to reconcile what the Talmud says with current practice. Tosfot does this all the time. It's really fascinating, by the way, in terms of understanding the halachic process and how halacha develops. That's all he's doing right now. It's classic Tosfot. It says in the Talmud, tripartite curriculum, but we don't do that here in France and Germany. How do we explain that discrepancy? Answer, because we are really doing the tripartite curriculum by studying Talmud Bavli, which includes all 3 things. You got that?
Well, since you didn't bring the question on your source sheet, I have to take your word for it that was his question, because we don't know what his question was.
Yeah, trust me. For now, as soon as this year's over, you can look it up, and you can complain.
What's this sugya? What is this sugya in Sanhedrin? Because we don't have that either.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I mean,
okay, all right.
Just trust me for now.
You also seem
Sanhedrin
skeptical
24.
that the Gemara only would really cover well. I mean, unless I was detecting skepticism on your part.
Okay, so we actually only have, I'm not even sure, there's a teacher after me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this. So, because we're really out of time. So let me just tell you where we're going. We've asked the question, how do we reconcile the way Torah is learned and taught in traditional yeshivot, which is Gemara, with the Tri-Partite curriculum, which the Talmud prescribes? So the first answer we had was from Tosfot, that we really do it by studying Talmud, because Talmud Bavli is mixed up with all those three things. Fine. What we're going to do next week is we're going to answer that question in a very radically different way. We're going to see how the Rambam seems to answer that question in a very different way. We'll look at the attempts of a couple of people who try to understand the Rambam's point. And then we're going to look in the Guide for the Perplexed of the Rambam, his great philosophical work, to suggest maybe a different way than most people who explain the Rambam are explaining him. And it's going to be absolutely radical. Absolutely radical. So much so that some people suggested that that passage in the Rambam should be burnt. And as a matter of fact, it was burnt. And so that will be part 2, which will, Bezrat Hashem, continue next week. I want to wish everybody a Chag Sameach. And as you receive the Torah, think about this idea of how we should be approaching the learning of the Torah with the Tri-Partite.
Also, Rabbi, if you can touch on this next time, just would this count if you're in like a university studying? So does the environment and the intention affect? Because it sounds very intellectual.
Very interesting question, and that the Rambam's approach actually will touch on that issue. Chag Sameach. Take care.